locally, church, whatever it might be, where this information might be helpful. And I'll share more bits and pieces of my own story, which maybe will help shed some more light on where and how could Your Life Iowa be helpful. A little bit more about who I am as far as just context and what my lens is as I look at the world and those types of things, and it could lend to what are the biases that I bring to the table when I talk about Your Life Iowa and the journey I hear is I am not a native Iowan. My wife is, and she was really happy when we moved back to Iowa, or moved to Iowa in 2005. We met while we were in college in Northwest Indiana. I actually was born and raised on the East Coast. I was born on Long Island, on the Air Force base that's no longer there. So my dad was in the Air Force back in the day. But I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and that sort of came by in a lot of different types of ways and shapes and forms. And what that means is I've not had to drink alcohol since 1987, which really feels like a long time ago now. It's been a while. And why that is important is that those experiences I had, growing up, figuring out what my relationship with alcohol is, being a young dad and trying to, be a responsible dad. The reality of all of that for me was at some point in time, somebody came up to me and literally put a mirror in front of me and said, "Are you okay?" And that takes courage sometimes when you see something, to say something. But this is what these individuals did. And I was in a really safe place when that happened. I was in seminary at the time that it happened. And it was literally the people that were around me that were saying, something's off, and we want to help you walk through that journey. So that's a bit of how I got into and have now worked in the field of chemical dependency, substance use, and homelessness for almost 40 years now, which again is feeling like a really long time. But there's also been these shifts and evolutions of things that have happened over those 40 years to get us to where we are today. And one of that is to say, we really need to be more open and honest about what's going on in our lives and others, and learn how to be vulnerable with each other and not be so worried about the baggage, and really being focused on who we are as people. And that, yeah, we might be making bad decisions, and yeah, we might be doing things that might not be legal, however you want to define that. But the reality is we're all human beings, and we all deserve respect. And sometimes when things go sideways, something needs to be there to help. And that's what Your Life Iowa is all about. So it's a little bit about my background. I got 3 kids, if that's important. They're all like 42, 39, soon to be 40, and 33. Got a couple of grandkids that are out in Spokane. I'm retiring next Thursday. So that's happening in the midst of everything that's going on. So if I start feeling nostalgic, or I start acting like a vicarious grandparent and bragging on my grandkids, that's what we do. So that's what we do. So as we go through the day, we're going to introduce Your Life Iowa to you. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is, how it began, and some of the data that's behind that. I'm a data geek, so if I get down that rabbit hole, just pull me out. And we'll do that. We're also going to talk about system navigation, which is a brand new service that started in July. Hopefully spend a chunk of time talking about stigma and what the impact is there. I was leading to that a little bit in the introduction part. Talk about the potential and what is it, not only how you can help Your Life Iowa, but how we can potentially help you as well as professionals and community members. And then we have some folks from Seasons here who will be talking to you a little bit about the services that they offer here up in the Spencer area. So let's just go back to Your Life Iowa. So how many of you have heard of Your Life Iowa before you walked in here today? Okay, well, good job out of Jill. So, and not surprising. Generally when I do presentations across the state, or I'm doing virtual events, It tends to be in the 50 to 70% range of people who are aware of Your Life Iowa, which tells us we've done some good work over the time. But I can also tell you I did a presentation for juvenile probation officers this past week, and there were 2 of 25 that knew about Your Life Iowa. And so we still have work to do, whether it's in schools, whether it's in hospitals, and HR, all those different environments that exist out there as to where could Your Life Iowa be of some help for folks that are going on there. So my standard 90-second elevator, what is Your Life Iowa? We are the 24/7, 365 phone, text, and chat for gambling, substance use, mental health, and suicide in the state of Iowa. It's free and it's confidential. That was way less than 90 seconds. But here's the real question. Sure, that's what we are. But let me ask you a question. Has life ever gone sideways for you? Have you ever had a bad day? Have you ever had a bad 10 minutes? That's what we're there for. Sometimes we're in the midst of things where we don't know what to do next. And I guess we're all adults. I'm kind of a fixer type of guy. Any of you else, you fixers, and you're wired that way? We want to have the answers. And when we don't have the answer, how comfortable does that feel? How hard is it to reach out and find an answer at times? And so Your Life Iowa is there in the midst of when that's going on, when you're in that bad 10 minutes, you're having a bad day, or when life's going sideways, and you don't want to talk to a parent, you don't want to talk to a spouse, you don't want to talk to your kiddo, you don't want to talk to the dog. We actually had a dog commercial with the teen spot we did, so you guys wouldn't laugh at it, but in the back of me there's actually a TV spot we had with teens where a young lady was actually talking to her dog about, you won't understand what's going on in my life, but I need some help. And then she calls Your Life Iowa. But we are here 24/7, 365, whether it's substance use, whether it's gambling, whether it's mental health, whether it's suicide related, or it's something else that's related to that. And you'll see this in the data that and I'll show you here in a little bit, is that there's often a presenting problem, but then there's a cascade of other things that are going on underneath the surface that have made that the presenting issue, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So literally, we're here when life goes sideways, no matter what it is that might be going on. Where the access point, brightly lit front door is like Director Ianson likes to say, for behavioral health system navigation and to behavioral health services in the state of Iowa. So when someone could benefit from being connected to behavioral health services, Your Life Iowa is the place to start for that. We have a website, yourlifeiowa.org. We have a brand new version of it that launched the end of July of this year. We're still working out some of the kinks, but one of your homework assignments is to go visit yourlifeiowa.org. Kick the tires around it a little bit. Let me know what you think, what's working, what's not working. And what I mean by working and not working, literally, there could be a broken link, but if you're getting stuck somewhere, you are looking for something particular and you couldn't find it, I want to know about that, because we don't want the website to be a barrier to someone accessing care. There are malleable moments that happen for every single one of us. And what I mean by a malleable moment is that there's a time where we get humbled, we get to the point of saying, yeah, I got something going on and I don't know what to do next. There's just something that's happening. And we're ready to take action. We're ready. I want to reach out for help, and I'm wanting a service. And what I want to make sure happens from a Your Life Iowa perspective is that when that reach out happens, when that call happens, when that individual is literally being vulnerable enough to say, I lost because I can't figure it out, and they reach out to Your Life Iowa, we want to be able to be with them in that moment and be able to link them to services. And where the challenge becomes is that we can be there, we can be ready, we'll pick up the phone, text, or chat that's coming in, but we have to have providers that are going to be ready to take that and run it with that. And that's the beauty of system navigation, is that at least Monday through Friday from 8 to 5:30, we can connect them to a system navigator that can run and get them connected to those services. So go to the website, kick around the website, let me know what you think. There's a contact form on the website you can click on and provide the feedback. Always welcome the feedback. We also have a support text messaging application. It's called yourlifeiowa.support. That's actually yourlifeiowa.support is the URL. And it's a message bank of about 450 supportive text messages, words of encouragement, that individuals can sign up. So if you're like someone that needs encouragement at 11:35 at night, you can have that message come at 11:35 at night. If you need it at 4:05 in the morning, you can schedule it to come at 4:05 in the morning. And if you only want it to come Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 4:05 in the morning, you can do that as well. But you can daily, I think it's 3 times a week, one time a week. There's, I think, 3 or 4 different options that you can choose for that. It's one of the more underutilized services that we offer at Your Life Iowa, but I will tell you, the people that have used it, I hear things like, how did you know to send that message at that time on that day for me to get that message? So it's there for you. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there are no accidents. We're here together, so there are no accidents when these messages come out when they are. And I've subscribed a couple of times, and it's just uncanny, the timing of how those messages hit within what might be going on in my life. And the last part is that the people that are part of Your Life Iowa, these are Iowans. These are people who know what Iowa is. They know the resources that exist in Iowa. These are people who have been trained specifically to do this work. The training milieu, I didn't mention this, but Foundation 2 is our call center, so we contract with them to provide the phone, text, and chat for Your Life Iowa. Every counselor goes through 70 plus hours of training before they even get on and take a call with Your Life Iowa. And then there's a bunch of supervision that goes on as well as part of that. So these are individuals that are dedicated, much like many of you are, to help and assist others that whatever might be going on in their life. So I mentioned Foundation 2. So Your Life Iowa launched in 2017, and Foundation 2 was awarded through a competitive procurement process the Your Life Iowa contract, and they have held that contract. The change that happened in July of this year is that many of you are aware that the new behavioral health services system launched in the state of Iowa on July 1, and as part of that, Iowa PCA Iowa Primary Care Association was awarded the Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization, or BHASO, contract with the state of Iowa. And so Iowa HHS and Iowa PCA really over the last 9 months was working to prepare for the launch in July, which included the launch of this new system, the new system, but as well as the behavioral health system navigation, which we'll talk more about here in a little bit. So the why. So why did we do this? I think Cindy, who's back there recording this for us, one of the questions she asked earlier is, so where did it start, and why did it start, and why did it happen? And it's like, have any of you ever had a great idea and you took it to your boss? And then they said no. Then you moved on and did your work, right? And then you had another great idea and you took it to your boss, and maybe they said no. Well, I had an idea. My boss at the time was Kathy Stone. She was the Director of Behavioral Health at the time with the Legacy Department of Public Health. And I just said, what if we put these 3 different things together and maybe we'd get some cost efficiencies? And the 3 different things were 1-800-BETS-OFF, which I think many of you are familiar with, is the gambling helpline in the state of Iowa, which now lives underneath Your Life Iowa. The original Your Life Iowa, which was suicide prevention and bullying prevention, that was funded by the state legislature. And then we had drugfreeinfo.org and the old Iowa Substance Abuse Information Center, which all went away, 2015, 2016 or so. And so we put these 3 contracts together and literally became what is now Your Life Iowa. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but part of the other why is Iowans need help. We have a lot of stuff going on in the state of Iowa. We have, a lot of, this is a very data-dense slide, but, almost half of Iowans are gambling every single day. Every month, not every day. That would be not an accurate statement. But in the past 30 days, about half. About 14% of Iowans are at risk for gambling. It's about 315,000 individuals at risk for problem gambling, and about 1% actually have a problem. The reason I start out with gambling is because we don't often talk about the impacts of what gambling goes on in the state of Iowa. It has a pretty big impact, and often all of these things are in combination. It's just not one. It's usually there's multiple layers of what are going on with individuals. But alcohol use, 63% of Iowans use alcohol in the past month. Almost 7% of us have an alcohol use disorder. We're not very proud of this statistic that we're in the top 5 in the US for binge drinking. We got a lot of work to do there. We have, individuals who are seeking treatment but didn't get it. Substance use, about 7.2 have used marijuana in the past month. About almost 10% have a substance use disorder. And again, that needed treatment but did not receive. Mental health, a bunch of different things in there. My apologies, for some reason, I never got my updated slide in this slide deck for the suicide rates from 2020, because we have the 2024 data. But 1 in 5 adult Iowans have experienced a mental illness in the past year. About 10%, 1 in 10, a major depressive episode in the last year. About 1 in 20 are having thoughts of suicide. About 53% that had a mental illness received the care. So it's a big portion of folks who potentially could benefit from mental health care are not seeking or receiving that care. And then suicide, are 18 per 100,000 Iowans. And that has been an increasing rate that, if you go back 20 years, it plateaued in 2022, 2023, dipped a little bit, and now it's the numbers increasing again. Then, as I mentioned, there's this huge overlap between substance use and mental health, where about 50%, whether it's substance use or it's mental health, are also experiencing the other thing, or one of the other things, including gambling. And so, as we look at the why, is we have this big 2.2 million, and this is only 18 older. We got about 3.2, 3.3 in total when we look at include the kiddos in the state of Iowa. But we know that there's a lot of concerned family and friends that are out there, and we know that we've got a pretty good number of Iowans who are at risk. And then we have those that are helped. And what we want to do with Your Life Iowa is keep growing that helped. We want to keep growing that bigger. And that's part of why you're here, is to get information. But we also need to help normalize this sense of asking for care and help. And because it's hard. We're going to talk a little bit later about stigma, and maybe I'll share a story or two about that as we move forward. So I asked you a little at the beginning, how many of you heard about Your Life Iowa? We did some initial qualitative research back in 2019, and we did focus groups across the state of Iowa, really to get at a proof of concept. Does this thing that we created in 2017, and we built a website, we have a call center in place, does it make sense? We were really trying to say, is there a proof of concept? Does it work? And one of the questions we asked I think we had 7 focus groups around the state and about 84, 85 individuals that were involved. Had you even heard of Your Life Iowa before them participating in the focus group? And 3 of the 84 had heard about Your Life Iowa back in 2019. So that's about 6%. If you had asked me today, where are we at? We're probably between the 35 and 40%. We actually have a question on a survey that's going out this fall to get a pulse about how well have we done to raise the awareness of Your Life Iowa since 2017. And part of that is doing presentations like this to get information to you. You share it with a friend, they share it with a friend. We sort of have this cascade effect, very much a grassroots effect that helps support all of the statewide initiatives and regional initiatives that we do to raise awareness about Your Life Iowa. So it's important to share the word, to pass it along. When I look at the mission and vision that we've put together for Your Life Iowa, we want to be the go-to resource for Iowans seeking information or help. And it's important to designate the difference between information and help, because sometimes people are just looking for information. Some people are just looking to be able to help figure out for themselves what they might want to do next. But we also can provide that help. We can provide the linkages, and now we have this thing called system navigation, which can really help us close the loop on some of that, so that we can ensure that Iowans who are seeking that help actually get engaged with that help, whether it be for gambling, mental health, substance use, suicide, or any of the other things that might be going on, which could be like, housing insecurity or food insecurity or relational issues or anything like that, employment-related issues. And then the vision is that connecting services and supports to Iowans to promote healing and well-being. We really want to ensure and help that when Iowans reach out, in whatever state that they are in at the time that they reach out, that we're able to move them to a place that they're self-directing to of where they would like to be. A more happier, more healthy, more productive life for themselves. And when we look at it in the grand scheme of things, we set some foundational goals back in 2022 of where we want to be. And the goal that we've had out there since 2021 is that by the end of fiscal year 2027, which will be just a couple of years from now, that we're at 85% name recognition in the state of Iowa. As I said, we're probably about halfway there, so we still have a lot of work to do over the next couple of years. And we'll see how that continues to go as we have more discussions within HHS and how we put together plans and as far as promoting what it is that we do with Your Life Iowa. One of the other things that came out of the work that we did in 2019 started informing a sense of who and what is Your Life Iowa. And I'll show you a slide in a little bit that will show you why these became what they are. But one of the things that we heard, one of the top reasons that we heard from individuals about why they didn't seek help or care was because of judgment, the fear of being judged. And sometimes when you talk about that, and it leads a little bit to when we talk about stigma in a little bit, but it's a sense of some societal mores, something is out there that says, if I do this, then somebody's going to judge me, or there's going to be perceived judgment. And so we wanted to just get rid of that sense at Your Life Iowa, that we want to be judgment-free. And the second thing was the sense of people really feeling alone, because they do. They are feeling alone in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. But at the same time, there are others that are walking through the same thing. And so one of the stories I share to bring this one home a little bit is, in my own recovery journey, someone said, Eric, you should go to a 12-step meeting. That would be really, really helpful for you, because it'll just be helpful to support your decision to be substance-free. And I said, okay. And I was living in the Columbus, Ohio area at the time. And so I went on the website, or got a list, I don't remember. And I found a meeting, and I lived on the northeast side, so I found a meeting on the northwest side, about 25 miles away from where I lived. And then even then, I parked probably 4 blocks away from the meeting, because I didn't want anyone to recognize my car or my license plate or anyone, because I didn't want anyone to know that I was doing this. I knew where the meeting was, and then I walked around the outside of that, I think it was a church at the time, probably for 45 minutes after the meeting started. So I think the meeting started at 7, so about 7:45, I said, okay, maybe I should walk in the front door. Best decision I ever made. Because for the first time in my life, what I thought was going to happen when I walked in that door was like, you're late, you got to go. And I was like, I'm ready to go. I'll just go back to my car and I'll go home. And I'll tell my therapist I went to a meeting, but they kicked me out. But you know what happened? We are so glad you are here. Why don't you come here and have a seat? And in that 15 minutes, there was a sense of me that I had never felt before, but I felt like I had come home. Literally felt like I had come home. All that baggage, all the stuff that I was carrying, all that stuff that I felt there was no one else in the world that had gone through the things that I had gone through. All of a sudden there were 100 other men in this room that were just like me. That had walked through the same stuff that I had walked through, or were walking through the same stuff that I was walking through right then at that moment. I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't have to bear it all by myself anymore. That's why that one's important, is that when people call, they're going to feel alone, but we also want to support that, there are other people, and we're going to link you to places and pieces so you know that you can feel supported, and that there are going to be individuals who understand what's going on with you, that the things that are going on, the baggage you're carrying around with you, that you can let it go, and you can just be with and get access to the care you might be looking for. And then the last part of it is just this pure public health model, and mentioned it earlier, is we want people to be better. We want people to be enjoying their lives. We want people to be able to make healthy decisions for themselves, and how can we help make that happen? So when you start putting this all free together, is that we're not going to judge you. We're going to let you know that there are others that are walking through the same thing, and we want to help you get to the point that where you want to get. And so those have become the 3 pillars of Your Life Iowa. We've slightly done some tweaks to them over the years, but they've held course for what we do through. And the other piece that we've learned over time is, whether we call it the YLI and the care continuum, you could call it the behavioral health care continuum. It's a care continuum. It's probably, if you've lived and breathed anything in the health field, this should not look too unfamiliar. But when Your Life Iowa first launched, we were really focused right here. We were really about, let's get people into care, let's get people into treatment, let's make that happen. But when we got our number out there, we started having people calling about, what's kratom? And that's not about getting treatment. That's just about information and providing information. And then we started discovering that people were saying, this social media thing, I'm feeling like it's really toxic. How do I have a conversation with my child about social media and what's appropriate and not appropriate for social media? We can help with that. We can help have those conversations. It could be, or it's a parent who sees their son might be looking a little hyperactive and not quite sure what's the next thing to do because their son may look a little hyperactive. They can call us and we can help them get connected to and what's that about for them, and also what that might be for their kiddo. Or it could be further along the continuum where a son or a daughter comes home and they're under the influence and a parent doesn't know what to do next. We can be with there and walk beside them side by side. Or it's a son or a daughter that's calling is that, I think my dad's passed out on the couch, I don't know what to do next. We can be there to help figure out a next step with that. Or it could be, what, I am sick and tired of being the middleman. Old Father Martin, I don't know how many of you know who Father Martin is. He's says long since passed, but he was a Catholic priest that did a lot of educational materials around alcoholism. And one of his favorite jokes that he would tell in some of his videos was, he goes into the men's restroom and sees a guy just pouring a beer down the urinal or down the, whatever they call those things, and he kind of asks him, so why are you just pouring the beer down the toilet? And the guy goes, I'm tired of being the middleman. So I mean, it's those types of things that, okay, I don't want to live this way anymore. I'm ready to make a change. We can help get connected to the resources, help assess what's going on, and get an individual, you know, if it's around alcohol, we'll get you connected to a treatment provider on the alcohol side of things. And if people who are in treatment, we can be there to help support them 24/7, 365. If they start having a bad day or they can't reach their counselor or they can't reach their treatment provider, we can be there to help support them in their recovery journey while they're in treatment. And then on the recovery support end of things, we have, one of my favorite examples is, we have a lot of truckers in the state of Iowa. You ever been on I-80? Do you guys get far enough south to travel on I-80? 20 doesn't seem to have as much truck traffic as 80 does. But by the way, I love driving up to this part of Iowa. It is not Des Moines. I just need to tell you. And I lived in Fort Dodge for about 5 years. Didn't share that earlier, but there's just a sense it's different, and it's beautiful, and it's serene. And then I totally lost my train of thought where I was going. Oh, the truck driver story, thank you. See, I go down a rabbit hole. Thank you for pulling me out of the rabbit hole. So the truck driver stories are, especially, we've got casinos across the state, and we'll have, real stuff, this really happens. Truckers who are in recovery from gambling will be driving down the interstate and you'll see the signs for the casinos across the state. And they may not be from the state of Iowa, but they'll see 1-800-BETS-OFF on another billboard, and they'll call 1-800-BETS-OFF, which is part of Your Life Iowa. And we will literally talk them into not going to the casino. We will literally be with them to make that happen. And I started doing the gambling thing in the state of Iowa around 2013. And so to kind of fill in the blanks about, so how did Your Life Iowa start? I was a gambling coordinator, and that's when I started having the conversations about, hey, what if we did this and we wrapped Bets Off into this, and could we get some more valued value? So Bets Off really started as other duties as assigned. That's how it actually started back in 2016, and then became a full-time job for me in 2021. So you get the continuum here. That's literally our job now for Your Life Iowa, is all the way to the point of health promotion. So we have things up here that you can take with you. I'm going to give away some things before you leave today. Why is that all important? Because it's just letting people know that Your Life Iowa exists. But as we go down that continuum, it's like, we'll talk about the Your Life Iowa resource. We have flyers, we have information pamphlets, we have toolkits, we have all kinds of things that can be used and leveraged to help increase awareness about gambling, substance use, mental health, and suicide, and that we're here 24/7, 365 to provide help and assistance. So here is, people often ask, what happens when where is my little, there he is. All right, take a listen.
Reaching out to Your Life Iowa for a concern with alcohol, drugs, gambling, mental health, or suicidal thoughts can be hard. But our hope is that once you know what to expect when you contact us, you'll see there's nothing to be nervous about. This is Emily. She has a problem that's been keeping her up at night, but she wasn't sure who to turn to until she found Your Life Iowa. When Emily calls, she's connected to Tammy, one of Your Life Iowa's compassionate counselors. Tammy lets Emily know she's here for her and can connect her to help. Tammy's role is to listen and offer confidential and immediate support without any form of judgment. Soon, Emily talks to Tammy openly and honestly about her concerns. Tammy lets her know that what she is experiencing is common, and based on what Emily is experiencing, Tammy offers a variety of support, like in-the-moment crisis counseling, information, or connecting her to nearby help. Together, Emily and Tammy come up with the next steps that Emily will take. Already, Emily's starting to feel supported and less alone after just one phone call, because she now knows she can call again at any time. Prefer to text or live chat? We offer those options too. When you text or chat with us online, you'll connect to a counselor who can offer immediate crisis counseling, support, or connect you to nearby help. When you're ready, we're here for you. No matter how you connect with Your Life Iowa, one thing's the same. You can find support for whatever challenge you're facing. No judging, just helping. You can call us, text us, or chat with us online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're your everyday life support.
So that's our 2-minute little ditty, and that's available for you. So it's on our website. You can view it on the website. Jill will be making the presentation. There's a YouTube link. But if you have like TV monitors at work or places where you loop videos, we can provide those MP4 files to you to put in your workplace video loop so people can understand that there's a place that they can call and help. And as I mentioned earlier, we had this idea in 2016, 2017. We procured a new website. We procured the Helpline Foundation 2 as our call center. And then we had about 9,000 contacts. And 1-800-BETS-OFF was probably, I don't know, 25%, 50% of those contacts. And we were pretty much established as an information and referral line, and we required that there be a counselor that was available for crisis 24/7, so a licensed mental health counselor. And that was kind of how we started. And when we had 9,000 contacts that first year, we were pretty excited. We were like, this is working. Because, you know, it was. And, you know, most of it was phone. We had a little bit of text and a little bit of chat. You can hardly even see that we got texts back then. And then 2019, a little bit more happened. And then, remember what 2020 was? That COVID thing? Well, there's other things that happened also in 2020 that set up for what was going to happen those next couple of years. Is the state legislature put in motion some legislation that was requiring the Legacy Department of Human Services to have a single statewide crisis line for mental health services. Because back in the day, every single MHDS region, Mental Health and Disability Services region, plus providers, plus like even Foundation 2, even today has their own crisis line. And it just got confusing, and our data from 2019 was showing from the focus group is that there were too many numbers. People did not know what number to call and where to start. And so the Legacy Department of Health and Human Services, because Your Life Iowa existed under the Department of Public Health, the Legacy Department of Public Health when it started, they came knocking on our door and said, we want to choose Your Life Iowa to be the statewide crisis line. And so between SFY 20 and 2021, we put a plan in place working with the local MHDS regions, with providers across the state to move towards transitioning 14 or 15 crisis lines that they all rolled into Your Life Iowa. And look what happened. It took off. And it kept taking off. And it kept going, and it kept going. And to the point of by SFY 2024, over 50,000 contacts. This is 150 people a day calling Your Life Iowa. But there's one more piece of the story. We're going to talk about, I got a slide on 988. 988 launched here. And people were going to say, you know, Eric, after 988 launches, Your Life Iowa call volume is going to go down because everyone's going to be calling 988. But look what happened. And guess what? The 988 call volume did the same thing. To the point of we almost have 300 people every single day that are reaching out either to Your Life Iowa or 988. So you'll notice that we have a dip in SFY 2025. We're not quite sure why that happened. We didn't have as much money in play for our health promotion activities across the state. So we're really paying close attention to what's going on, especially now with the launch of system navigation, to see if that rebounds a little bit. When you look at the SFY 2025 tactics together, you know, gambling at 1,230, it's been between 1,200, 1,700 over the 7 years. That's been pretty consistent. Substance use has continued to grow every year. Suicide, it's about, if you look at the numbers, we had 40,000 contacts and almost 10,000 of them were related. So about 1 out of every 4 contacts is related to suicide. You can see adult mental health by far, and you put adult and youth mental health together. Mental health is the #1 reason people are calling. It's the #1 reason people are calling. SDOH, you're going, what the heck's SDOH? Social determinants of health. We started tracking this 3-4 years ago. And the reason we started tracking it was we started noticing that people were, when they picked up the phone, they were saying, I need help with housing. They weren't calling about gambling, substance use, mental health, or suicide. They were calling. So it was like, we needed to figure out a way to track this. And then what we started discovering is that that was going on with a lot of our people, because you'll see it's almost 18,000. It's almost 1 out of every 2 contacts that are coming in. There's something beyond that going on. And there is this connection between all of them, because you can see with 53,000 topic contacts versus 40,000 contacts, phone, text, or chat, people are calling about more than one thing. And so we're keeping track of that and seeing. Anything surprise you there? It wasn't a trick question. I just figured if anything stood out. Then we have a website. So I know now enough about websites that I could probably develop and create my own website. So I've been playing in Drupal for, 8 years, 7 years now. But here's what's incredible. So, back in 2018 when we first launched the new, what we call Your Life Iowa 1.0, when we procured the new website, and this is all users, all states, all countries in here. So we didn't do it just Iowa, but 50,000. We had 50,000 visits, about 35,000 individuals who visit the site. And again, we're really happy with that. But look what happened. People started finding out about it. We started putting media in play. And we've discovered things like when prominent people in the state of Iowa start talking about Your Life Iowa, Iowans listen. There was, during 2020, 2021, when Governor Reynolds was doing her weekly COVID updates. You remember those, when she'd do those press conferences? At the time, Director Claybaugh, who was over public health, talked about Your Life Iowa at one of those governor's conferences, and we actually tracked what happened to the visits to the Your Life Iowa website. Was within the hour after Director Claybaugh talked about Your Life Iowa, our visits over that next hour went up 2,500%. They just went through the roof. It was like you could just see it happen. And right now, we peaked out almost 900,000 sessions and almost 600,000 users back in 2023. We had a lot of health promotion in the end of SFY23 that was driving a lot of traffic to the website. But I think last year, don't quote me on the exact number, it's about 270,000 Iowans visited the website. And when you put that into context of, we have 50,000 contacts to the call center, the website is where we get a lot of traffic and where we really see a lot of people diving into a lot of different things. And it's interesting to see. I don't have like our top 10 pages, but gambling is usually in the top 10. Our locator is usually in the top 10. Find help for parents and find help for teens is often up there. The adult mental health page is up there often a lot as well. So I talked earlier about the website. We launched a brand new website. It's our 4th version of the website since we've launched in 2017. And it's using the new platform that came out of the governor's initiative to uniform all statewide websites. I don't even notice that there was that huge initiative that went on for across all state departments to update their websites and be on a unified platform. And part of that initiative is they created a marketing platform of which Your Life Iowa then was required to participate in. And it's really a thing of beauty. We're still working out a lot of kinks. We kind of shoehorned all the data and the information that was on the old website into this new version, and we're still figuring things out a bit. So really encourage you to go out and take a look, see if you can find what you're looking for or discover what's missing, or if you find a broken link, just email and I'll go, you win. But we know we still have some broken links out there that we keep working on because they just seem to appearing each week. But we're really proud of it and what's going on there. We also have a locator which can help you find care next to it. There's still working through some things with this website as well, especially when you're searching for, like, I use the example of Grimes because it's one that came up this past week. So if you put Grimes in, nothing shows up because we don't have any treatment centers in Grimes. But we do have within 15 or 20 miles. So we don't have this ability to do a radius on the website. So our counselors at Foundation 2 have gotten very good at using these plus and minus bars to zoom in and zoom out around areas to help find those locations. And so we continue to work with the developers saying, hey, can we get that radius button on there? Because that'll really help people find care that might be close to them. Right now, it lists all the licensed substance use and gambling programs in the state of Iowa, as well as the drinking driver education classes. All the CCBHCs are listed there. The CCBHC, help me out. Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic, thank you. And the Community Mental Health Centers, the CMHCs. We've also been expanding and adding recovery community organizations on the locator, as well as other mental health providers. So if you're a mental health provider and you're not on the list, then you can send us an email and we'll help get you on the list. We're kind of internally looking at discovering how this locator can potentially be used as a unified source of truth for the state, that everyone would use it to find those services. But we've got to figure out a way to manage it and whatever. So it's a work in progress for us, but again, it's often in the top 10 of places to go to find help and information. So the Your Life Iowa Resource Center, this is like the fourth rendition of a place where all our media is. So one of the things when I was working on the gambling side was we had all this wonderful bets off stuff, but we had no way to get it to people. It was just something, we did these statewide campaigns, but we had no way to get it to providers. We had no way to get it to locals to use, and whether it's in their workplace or in community organizations and whatever. And so our prevention team said, hey, we've got some money. Let's do some work on this. So we created what was first called the Media Center, and it was amazing what ended up happening. And so we were able to put all these multiple different campaigns in them there, whether they were the Your Life Iowa awareness campaigns, or they were a campaign about alcohol, or they were a campaign about opioids, or there's a campaign about stigma, or there's a campaign about addiction, or there's a campaign about meth never ever, what gets crushed, which was a teen alcohol campaign. I think we've had up to 35 different campaigns that have run over the last 7 or 8 years. It's just amazing how many of those are. But all those campaigns are now tagged with Your Life Iowa. And so that people always know that Your Life Iowa is a place that I can get more information. And often those campaigns will actually take you to a specific spot on the website if you click on the links. But then we started looking at, well, we have other things outside of the campaigns. We have toolkits, we have brochures, we have posters, we have all these other things. We have magnets, we have workbooks. And so we've made these all available, and you can go to this is actually a picture of what the landing page looks like, and you can go by topic if you want, or you can say browse all topics. And you can say, I want to see the business cards, or I want to see the magnets. I brought business cards and magnets with me. These are available to you for free. They come in packs of 50. You can order them right off the website, and you can have them available to hand out and give to folks that you work with, whether it's at work or in the community organization or a church group, that type of thing. So a place where you can get access to a lot of digital and print-ready files. I can't even guess the number. There's probably 15 TV spots that can be requested that you can play locally at your office, at a community group, at a church, or if you've got connections with TV and either have funds to pay for it to be on TV, or you get some added value or some free PSAs available locally, you can reach out to us and we can help make those MP4s available to be used. So I encourage you, if you've not visited the website, go to kick around that resource center and let me know what you think. I have a story here that's not too atypical from what we get to see happens. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's literally what we hear just about every day on Your Life Iowa is somebody who is calling. And by the way, anyone who calls Your Life Iowa, the very first thing that we do is we make sure they're okay. And that means, where are they at? Are they in the midst of a crisis where they might benefit from someone being with them right now? And what we call mobile crisis outreach, mobile crisis response. We can make that happen. And YLI will stay on the line until help arrives, because we want to make sure you're okay. So every single person that calls Your Life Iowa, that's the first thing we make sure. We want to make sure they're okay. But this is pretty typical. And in this case, the caller said, yeah, I'd like mobile crisis to come. And we stayed on the phone until they arrived. And there's often a lot of good outcomes that happen because of that. So we have 988 as well, and you're going like, well, Eric, you're talking about Your Life Iowa. Why are you now talking about 988? Because people have that question all the time. What is 988 compared to what is Your Life Iowa? So if you look at everything that's listed here on 988, you'll see it's free, it's confidential, and 24/7. So is Your Life Iowa. So what's the deal there? So the 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline is actually the new version of what was the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which was I think it was 1-800-247-TALK was the old number, which still works. It'll take you to 988 now. But 988 is the National Suicide Crisis Lifeline. It is a national program. Iowa participates. We have 2 call centers that are contracted to be part of the 988 network. One is Foundation 2, which is also the Your Life Iowa call center. Then also Community, which is in Iowa City and in Johnson County. So when someone calls 988, it's either going to go to Foundation 2 or it's going to go to Community. It's based on where they are and proximity to a cell tower. I think they're pinging off of cell towers now to make sure that people get there, because sometimes not everyone in Iowa has an Iowa area code on their cell phone. So we want to make sure that they get connected to the right place. And the other beauty of the 988 place is that if a call pings Foundation 2 or it pings Community, and neither of them can pick up, there's a national backup, so that the individual will make sure that every call gets answered. That's one of the big differences with Your Life Iowa. We don't have a backup. So if we're at capacity and we can't answer, it just doesn't get answered. But we do pretty good. Again, trained counselors, just like the Your Life Iowa counselors. In fact, the counselors who are answering 988 are the same counselors who are answering Your Life Iowa. So it's a beautiful kind of cross competency piece. But the big challenge across for all of us is the continued funding for both. So we've not figured out a full-time funding mechanism for 988. We really haven't figured that out for Your Life Iowa. I mean, we've made it work for all these years, but there really is not an identified dedicated funding source for each. And there's some ideas about how 988 might get funded. There's some ideas to really saying, hey, if we're going to build Your Life Iowa as that front door for behavioral health services, what type of commitment would be needed to make that happen, and so that we do it well. The other transition that is happening, and it's in process, as I mentioned that in 2019 or so, Your Life Iowa became the statewide crisis line. We're now transitioning 988 to be the statewide crisis line. So that, as we're talking about it, we're transitioning Your Life Iowa from being the number that's called the dispatch mobile crisis to 988 being the number that's called the dispatch mobile crisis. That's all in transition right now. So you'll probably start seeing and hearing of things over the next year or so as we get more articulate about how that's working. So right now, 988 can dispatch, Your Life Iowa can dispatch. So, and if you call Your Life Iowa in crisis, we will make sure that you get the care you need. In the same way people will call 988, they can access behavioral, the system navigation as well by calling 988, because as I said, it's the same people who are calling. So let's talk about system navigation and a little bit about stigma. So what is system navigation? Brand new. So again, just for context, I mentioned it once. So we launched a brand new behavioral health system on July 1. We have a statewide plan. You can go to the Iowa HHS. It's a wonderful plan, a lot of thought and effort. Director Garcia and Director Ianson and all those folks have just put oodles and oodles of time and effort into putting together, and not just them. I mean, a lot of everyone in HHS has had a lot of input on that statewide plan. But it's new and it's different, and it's really all about going back to that malleable moment. When that malleable moment happens, that we have a system that responds in time at that moment to ensure that that individual gets access to services and care. So as part of that, Iowa PCA was awarded the Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization contract for all 7 districts. What district are we in here in Spencer? District 2. So District 1, Northwest, District 3 is the Northeast, and then we have 4, 5, 6, and 7 going across the middle in the southern part of the state. So each one of those districts has their own kind of CEO, if you will, but they also have what's called a system navigator lead, and then they have a system navigators underneath each of them. And right now, as of this last, what day is today? Wednesday? When did we have call? Friday? I think they're up to 50 system navigators that have been hired across the state, and they're still hiring more. And I think there's a couple districts that don't yet have a lead. So, but they're continuing, Iowa PCA is continuing to work on that. But literally, these system navigators are individuals that have been trained. These are, to hear Iowa PCA talk about it, they got some really good people. They got some of the A players that have come from other like organizations, mental health, substance use, care coordination providers, people who have just been in the midst of helping individuals get access to care. And so these people really know their stuff. And so they're trained to be responsive, they're trained to listen, they're trained to walk beside individuals and help them ascertain what might be the next best step for them to take and what services could best benefit them. One of the key things is that although most of them probably have a background in crisis counseling, that's not their main gig. Their main gig is really to help navigate a system and navigate through care. They don't provide treatment, and it's not, some people say, well, gee, that sounds a little bit like care coordination. But I know we were talking a little bit later, that often, organizations like Seasons, they're going to talk a little bit later with us, and others across the state. We have the ADRCs and the disability access points across the state. They all offer services, and we're not trying to duplicate any of those type of navigation services that already exist in the system, but the system navigator with Iowa PCA will help link to those services when they're needed, or when if it comes up that those could be helpful for them. So so let me just stop there and see if there's any questions specific about system navigation. There's a couple flyers up on the table that you can pick up and take with you. There's one you can actually download from the Your Life Iowa Resource Center and print out locally if you'd like. The big thing is that we're learning. We're only 2 months in right now, and so the feedback's important. If there's an experience which doesn't feel like it lines up to what you see here is helping people get connected to services. I didn't mention this piece here. It's also about getting those basic needs, the housing and those types of situations taken care of. But it's really good. And maybe the best way to get at this is even do a little self-disclosure on my part is I had my youngest son, who is 33 now, was involved in a fairly significant incident back on Super Bowl Sunday. And just to put context here, my son at that time was 6'1" and about 450 pounds, morbidly, severely obese. And he was working food service in the Ames area, ended up doing some pizza delivery, ended up leaving his car running, was delivering a pizza, and a 12-year-old jumped in the car and stole his car. He lumbered after it. He tripped, fell, broke his leg in 2 places. Didn't know it at the time. His car was stolen, phone was stolen, ended up getting the car back and all that type of stuff. But he ended up emailing us. We said, you probably ought to go to the emergency room. He says, no, I'm just going to go home. So he's walking on a leg that's broken in 2 places. Got home, and he couldn't sleep, so he ended up in the ER in Ames. We got a call about 4:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and he said, hey, my leg's broken in 2 places. I can't walk. I'm immobilized. I can't put any weight on my leg. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll come and get you. We'll bring you down to Ankeny where we live, and we'll figure it out. And did I tell you my son weighed 450 pounds? He's about 6'1". Do you know how easy it is for a 450-pound man to get around on one leg? It's not very easy at all. Do you know how hard it is for a 450-pound man with a mom and a dad trying to get him in and out of a car and then up 2 stairs into a place where he can sit down and sleep and rest? Do you know how much work it takes for a 450-pound man to get from point A to point B when he doesn't know how to use crutches? That was a Your Life Iowa moment. That was a system navigation moment. But remember, I told you this happened in February. This wasn't here. We had no freaking clue what to do. So I'm talking to Director Ianson, I'm talking to my boss, I'm talking to things. And fortunately, within 10 days, we figured out we could not do it at home. How do you give a bath to a 450-pound man who cannot put weight on a leg? What do you do if a 450-pound man falls in your house and you can't get him up? Those are the types of things we were dealing with as parents. Fortunately, a lot of God moments happened within all of that context. And we got him into a long-term nursing care facility, which, again, was a blessing in disguise in many places. So he could at least be in a safe place where he wasn't going to do anything crazy or stupid or fall and all that type of thing. But as he started getting things addressed, I forgot to tell you, no insurance. You know, he's working 2 part-time jobs, trying to make ends meet. He's living in an apartment that has 2 flights of stairs, so going home that wasn't going to work. So early July, when we were contemplating him potentially coming home, or back to our place, he had lost about 130 pounds, which was a good thing. He almost looks svelte now. But I said, Aaron, you know what? You just need to call Your Life Iowa and get connected to system navigation and figure out how we can help. And, you know, it worked beautifully. My son's on Medicaid now. My son's seeing a mental health therapist now. My son's connected to Iowa Works and has a plan, actually, as of yesterday, to start looking, so what should I be doing when I grow up, Dad? But that's how it works. He has testing with flow state today to see whether or not he should be on medication for his attention deficit disorder, because we learned that attention deficit disorder may have been tied to his obesity. And so it's like we're starting to get some answers to questions. And the other thing, my son's a different person than he was on February 9th. My son was full of shame, guilt, and I don't want to be a bother to anyone. He wanted to hide. He could not hide his 450 pounds. I saw him a couple days ago, just because my wife says, you should go check on him and make sure he's doing okay, because he's been back in his apartment now for a couple of weeks. But I I gave him a hug and I said, I am so proud of you for all the hard work that you've done over these last days, because I would have never, ever thought. And I shared this morning. The problem for me as a parent, I kept seeing the 450 pounds. I kept seeing the 450 pounds and I forgot to see my son. And I said, that so convicted me. And, fortunately I got my head in the right place for all of that, to be able to love on my son and be the support that he needed. I couldn't do the work for him, but he's able to communicate the shame, the guilt, the remorse, that's okay, don't pay attention to me, I don't want to be a bother to anyone. He's starting to own and that's all a result of him being involved with system navigation and talking and being connected to the services that he needs. And he's got some work to do yet, but that gives you that's how this works. And I'm the freaking Your Life Iowa project director. And that's how close he gets. My son said, well, they know who I am because they're going to see my last name. And I says, I don't care. Go. It's there. It's for us. And so I think within the week we had a call a team call for the Behavioral Health Division. And I shared, it works. This is good. We got good stuff going on. So how do you get access to it? You can call, text, or chat. And remember when I talked earlier, the first thing you have access to is making sure you're safe, making sure you're in a good place. So you get that crisis evaluation done to make you're in a good place. And then they're just going to kind of listen and get a feel for what's going on. And you can specifically ask for system navigation and they will link you. Or you may not be calling knowing that you need to get system navigation and they're going to offer it to you as saying, it sounds like you're ready to take a next step. Would you like me to connect you to a system navigator? And then they'll make that happen. But this is the brightly lit front door. And the other thing that can happen, and I didn't do this with my son, but if you're in a work situation or a family situation or a church situation or a community, or you're with a stranger that you just happen upon that really seems to be struggling with what might be going on in their life, you can call Your Life Iowa together and say, I got somebody here who could really benefit. Here's Joel, would you be willing to talk to him? And you can have that joint conversation with Your Life Iowa, and then you can have that joint conversation with a system navigator. The system navigation services, I think it's 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. If it's after hours, they'll send an email and then there's a follow-up the next business day. So, and they're monitoring when we've had about, don't quote me on the exact number, it's about 2,700 of those contacts have happened since July 1. And they're tracking when they happen and what time they happen and trying to get a feel for how do we potentially need to expand the availability of system navigators to meet the need. Because going back to all the different things, I talked a little bit about stigma, and we're going to talk a little bit more here in a slide or two. But look what supports that. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go. I'm confused. I'm feeling overwhelmed. This came out of our focus group work. When we asked Iowans, what are the barriers to getting care? Why do Iowans not ask for help? Because they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do next. You heard talk about where my son was. Shame, fearful. I don't want to be a burden. I don't deserve help. I did this to myself. Feel alone, isolated. Nobody cares about what's going on. I don't know about the costs. I got too much. Anyone feel like they're too busy to help themselves, to do what's going on? When we're in the midst of the baggage or whatever's going on in our lives, it's real easy to be in denial and just say, I'm just going to do the next best thing for themselves. I'll give you a perfect example. My dad's 90 years old. This conversation just happened. His computer was hacked. And in the conversation about the computer, he shared that, we kind of put a plan together, what he needed to do and the next steps about his computer being hacked and keeping his finances safe and whatever. It's the Phantom Hacker. Go Google it. These criminals have taken over $4.88 billion from our seniors in this country. This is a nationwide epidemic going on right now with this phantom hacking stuff, and you read through it and you're like, that's exactly what happened to my dad. So we put in place, he's put all these steps in place of how he was going to get through and get all that stuff solved, and so that his finances would be okay and he didn't get identity stolen and all that type of stuff. In the midst of us talking about that, he had his best friend, he lives at a senior living environment, he's 90 years old, and his best friend's spouse passed on Sunday. My mom, his wife passed a year ago, Mother's Day. And my dad starts getting really, really emotional on the phone about this loss. And it was unexpected, totally. It was literally, they think she had a fracture or something happened in her hip that was so painful it caused her to pass out, and she fell in the tub. And she drowned, is basically what happened. And my dad got super emotional, and I'm going, okay, so how I need to be supportive like this? And I'm saying, Dad, what do you think is a good next step for you, and what do you think would be really beneficial for you? And I said, so what do you think is the next best thing that you need to do for yourself? I need to call Craig and help him get me my new computer. So he switched from in this emotional state of he was literally sobbing on the phone, to where he moved into this moment of, okay, the next best thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get busy. I'm gonna go through that checklist of things. And I circled back to my dad and I says, no, Dad, really, what's the next best thing you need to do? It feels like you need a hug. Who can you get a hug from? Who can you go talk to? Who can you go be in community with at the senior center to meet you in the midst of your grief? Because that's what we do. We just will go, we will totally move on because we'll do whatever's worked for us in the past. So sometimes this busyness gets in the way of us being able to reach out and get the care and things that we might need. And then sometimes things feel insurmountable, and certainly the not trusting people. But those are the barriers. Anything surprising on that list? Is that anything missing from that list? Our job is to remove those barriers. Our job is to have presentations like this and have communications with this of saying, it's okay, despite all of this, to reach out for help. So I'll say one more thing before we start talking about stigma. You guys know what the first step of the 12 steps are? 12 steps of recovery. I don't know if any of you have walked that journey. We admitted we were powerless and our lives had become unmanageable over whatever it was. And literally it means you have to admit to yourself that you lost. Anyone in this room like to admit that they lost? Anyone? It's hard to get to that malleable moment. So when somebody is ready to reach out, do you realize that they've had to humble themselves to the point of saying, I need help. That's why we have to respect that moment. When they're there, in there, we have to be ready to do that. And to segue into stigma, using my son as an example, I couldn't get around the 450 pounds. I just could not get around the 450 pounds, and I could not see my son. And I needed to see my son as a person and not be judgmental about all the bad things he was doing and his eating habits and all the other things that were going on that caused that 450 pounds. I needed to see him as a person, as an individual, as someone who demanded respect, regardless of the baggage that was going on in his life. So when you get somebody that's to a point of saying, I need help or I need something, we have to be able to respond. And we have to check our own biases and prejudices and the things that we do. I mean, if you ask me, did my son get discriminated against at the hospital? Absolutely. He should have never come home with us. Never. He should have been hospitalized and then put into long-term care. We all have prejudice, folks. I don't care who you are, we have them. We need to own, we need to be aware of them, we need to identify them, because it happens all the time. And when you put this and this together, how was my son feeling the day he was in that emergency room? This is what was going on. Not only from my own lens, but from the hospital lens and from the other people that were like trying to do assistance. The Beauty and I will give a shout out to the Ames Police Department because they went and found the car, and to his employer because they helped make him find the car. So there were some good things that happened in all of that. But when we got to the essence of trying to get him help, it wasn't happening. There was this incredible amount of shame and whatever. So when you kind of define stigma and you look through everything that's going on, it's discrimination, it's identify a piece, and often it's around lack of knowledge. I mean, what other things that are out there do you think there's stigma attached to? I mean, in your own lines of work, what's out there? So what I'm trying to get you at is that each and every one of us have these preconceived notions about what each type of person is, whether it's a police officer, whether it's, and then we start throwing in labels like, well, what does an addict look like? Or what does someone with bipolar disorder look like? Or what does someone who's crazy look like? Or ADHD or autism? Or we start throwing these labels around, which are very disrespectful, by the way, because, and I use my son as the example, my son was not 450 pounds. He weighed 450 pounds, but my son was Aaron, who just happened to weigh 450 pounds and was carrying a lot of baggage. He was Aaron. He was Aaron first. And the reality is that when you look at stigma across the board, whether it's, in theory there could be good stigma, I guess, but in theory it hurts because it creates fear and potentially anger. Any of you guys been on social media this last couple of weeks? What's going on there? Has there been any anger out there? Has there been any toxicity out there? And why? Because of these preconceived notions of what the left, what the right, what the center, what the up, what the down, whatever it is. There's these preconceived notions, and what do we forget? There's people involved. We don't want to know the truth. We only want to believe what we want to believe because this is what we've heard or what we've been taught, and that goes back to the prejudice and the discrimination that's all out there. And so when this is all present, and I'm just using my son as an example. He's probably going to hate me after all of this, but no, he won't. He loves me to death. Stigma can make people more likely to hide symptoms of their illness, keep themselves from seeking care immediately, and prevent individuals from adopting in behavioral behaviors. My son weighed 450 pounds. That didn't happen overnight. That's been going on for a decade or more. I would cry over the amount of his weight. And with this going on, it's really hard to make changes. It's really hard to make changes. But when you take the focus off the behavior and you put the focus on the person, what happens? Good things can happen. Because you're meeting the person with where they are in their space. Not with the baggage, not with everything that's else is going on, but you're meeting the person with where the person is at. And that's what we want to be able to do. That's what we want to be able to do when we're looking at providing help for them. And having that relationship with them. One of the story I told this morning, and I'll throw it in here as we're looking at this Iowa data. or Iowa stigma stuff that came from work done by, I think it's called Shatterproof. You can Google Shatterproof, and they do anti-stigma campaigns all across the country, and we funded them to do a study in the state of Iowa a couple of years ago, and this is some of the stuff from there. But I wanted to share another story about my older son, who's a volunteer firefighter in Northwest Indiana. He's also he's been an EMT. He's also been a volunteer police officer. Well, he is wired to respond. He just is, he's got a lot of my wife. He's also got a little bit of me. If you saw him, you'd go, hey, that's Eric's son. He was visiting. He had his big GMC Silverado diesel, so he could make that big black thing come out the back when he wanted to. But we were down in Ankeny driving around, and we were in the Menards parking lot. We had pulled in one way, and there was a van, old, dilapidated, 1990s type of van, and it was in the T of the intersection. So it was blocking traffic from 3 directions. Nobody could move, and people were honking horns. And this was a young guy, probably late 20s, and he had an older daughter and a younger daughter that was in a car seat. Thank you, senior moment, and was crying a little bit. And I was like, "Oh, this is just really inconvenient. How are we going to get through this?" And my son turned off the car, turned off the truck, got out of the truck, walked up to the van, knocked on the window, and said, "Are you okay?" He wasn't. He was like an emotional wreck because he didn't know what to do. His car was blocking traffic. He evidently had some bad gas or something. I don't know what it would actually, but the car would not run. It would not start. It would not go anywhere. And I got convicted again. My children are doing this great for me. I always just need to be aware of what's going on around us. And so we ended up, long story short, pushing the car out of the way, and that would have been a situation I would have never probably put myself in before. But in the midst of all this, we were able to make sure they got a tow truck, got him some good gas and everything else, and I actually started having a conversation with the guy, and he was English challenged, for lack of a better term. I'm not sure from what country he was from, but he was definitely struggling with the English, and maybe he had some developmental disabilities going on at the same time. That didn't matter to my son. He said, "Here's someone in need, let's help." And so I got a lesson. And that's the thing. We go about life not paying attention to the stuff that's going on around us. And much like you're here, it's like those situations that present themselves, they may be presenting themselves to a reason for you in the moment to respond. So when you look at this was specific to opioid use disorders. Iowa residents are more stigmatizing of opioid use disorders than the US population. That means Iowa looks very negatively against anyone that is on an opioid, for medication. And some of that is a lack of knowledge, to be honest. It's an ignorance about what opioid use disorders are. But much of stigma comes from not knowing. Surveyed Iowans report less willingness to interact with people with OUDs in the neighborhoods as friends at work or compared to national averages. So there becomes this like scarlet letter thing that happens with people who have this disorder in the community, and people do not want to associate it or be with them. On a scale of 1 being the lowest, 4 the highest, Iowa's scale scores for public stigma and structural stigma, which is talking about what's entrenched in our way we do business, were higher than the national average scale. However, Iowa's average scale scores for self-stigma were lower. So the individuals who were reaching out and getting medication for opioid use disorder, they were like, this is really going to help me. They had less stigma than the population in general when looking at medication for opioid use disorders, which is what MOUD means there. Iowans, again, when looking to hire someone who has an MOU or has an opioid use disorder, They don't look too kindly upon those individuals. So, did I share I was at the Kingdom Living Recovery Conference or festival that happened in Des Moines this past Saturday? There were 2,500 people there, all in recovery, at one event, having a blast in 98-degree heat. Fortunately, there was a lot of water and a lot of good things. But I wonder how many people who don't walk a recovery journey would have come. There probably were family members there that weren't walking a recovery journey that were there. But how many of you would go to an alcohol-free event in 98-degree heat? How could you, and some will go, well, Eric, that sounds kind of stigmatizing, but it's real. How many people, how many would go to a big social festival and there wasn't drinking? And here 2,500 people had a whale of time. So when we start also talking about, and I've kind of honed in on a little bit, it's about the person, not the baggage. So we're in a process of educating, and there's 2 flyers that are available on the Resource Center that talk about person-first language and have a chart that's much longer than what this, but just to give you a couple of examples, is that we're really working at how do we stop using the language that is stigmatizing. So language like substance abuse, addict, junkie, abuser, drugger, user, alcoholic, drunk, clean, that's all languages that's been perceived as very stigmatizing. And so there's this shift of saying, instead of substance abuse, we talk about substance use. We talk about a person with a substance use disorder or a challenge. We talk about a person with alcohol use disorder, or I'm substance free or no longer using. And I'll give you the example of, if I had introduced myself at the beginning and said, hi, my name's Eric and I'm a drunk. What's your perception of me versus the introduction that I did give you? Hi, my name's Eric and I'm a person in long-term recovery, which means I haven't had a drink of alcohol since 1987. What's different inside you when you hear those 2 things? So it's important for us to be aware of what our internal biases are and learning language that is respectful and meets people with where they are. And again, you see the person staying away from phrases of clean and dirty and relapse. And what's really interesting while I was at the festival is that I heard a lot of this language as people were talking. And these are the people that are in recovery. And so we have a lot of work even to do within the recovery community to really learn what is the respectful, non-stigmatizing way to talk about it, so that we can role model that to the general public, so that people can see us as a person and not as whatever the baggage is that's going on. Does that make sense to everyone? So what are the things that you can do to reduce stigma? What can we do? I got 2 slides on that. First is just be educated. Go out, explore. Be careful about AI. But AI can be helpful. But really check your own talk. I generally, if I slip in my conversation and use a stigmatizing piece of language, I'll self-correct and say, I need to take that back. This is how I needed to have said it. And then explain a little bit about what the slip was. But really be aware of, when you see something on social media where someone puts something out really, really toxic and you're going, I just want to respond and no. Or the person cuts you off in traffic, what happens? What's your first thing that comes to mind? And it may be someone's in a hurry because their wife's pregnant and needs to get to the hospital. I just make something off the top of my head. But we just judge. We just jump right away. We just make that piece. So examine your reactions to situations and things that are going on. And the first thing I'll tell you, it's a good exercise in grace. It's a good exercise in grace. Choose your words carefully. what are words, what are labels that we throw around pretty randomly? I mean, I talked about addict and alcoholic and junkie and that type of, but what are other labels that we'll throw around in general about the population? Or you might throw around at work?
Bossy.
Bossy, lazy, crazy. What else? What do they say in HR about? Non-compliant. Oh, non-compliant.
Rule breaker.
Rule breaker.
OCD.
OCD. ADD. Bipolar.
People like to assume that they know what's wrong with someone. That guy's probably bipolar.
Yeah. Instead of using that as a situation, gee, I wonder what's going on with George. I wonder if I can just go have lunch with George and get to see what's going on with George. How different is that? Could you imagine if we all did that? What potentially could happen? So choose your words and check yourself. I mean, because it takes practice. You will be surprised how often you throw those labels out. And so be mindful to self-correct and how is a better way to say it. And then if it happens amongst others, just do a timeout. Whoa, I need to correct my speak. And that's how you educate others, pass on the facts, help challenge the myths and the stereotypes that are out there. And then the other part is really focus on the positive. Once I got away from looking at 450 pounds and saw my son, I got to see who my son is and who I gave birth, my wife gave birth to, but who I made help happen. And the history and everything that goes on, and then how do I repair that had been really in a strained relationship for almost 14 years. And all of my talk, have you heard what my son did to earn that? Did you hear me talk anything about how my son did anything differently to earn that? Who made the change? I did. I had to make the change. That's the other part of this. You can disagree with whatever else might be going on in the world, but where the change happens is here. And you have to model that. You can't force anyone else to change. It just does not happen. But you can lead, you can model, that type of thing. So, and of course, you can't discriminate in that type of thing. So, we're all on the same team, folks. We're all on the same team. So when we're working together, we're aligning the work that we do, whether it's with HR or whether it's in the organizations we work with out in the community, our church communities. We can really help direct people to knowing that Your Life Iowa can be a place. We can help raise awareness about our talk and about stigma and how we can normalize help seeking in this country, in Iowa. With system navigation, we have this ability now to uplift people, walk beside people until they're engaged in services. And then, we all need to help facilitate change to help reduce barriers to care. Some of that's legislative stuff, some of that's communal stuff, some of that is our own personal biases and changes and the identified barriers that we can do. I mean, this is all that we've done since we started. The Media Center, statewide crisis line, medication-assisted recovery, the MAP programs were added. We added brain injury. I got a full-time job being the Your Life Iowa director in 2021 because it was just other duties as assigned prior to that. The new Resource Center. Oh, we have an apparel store. I have things to give away after season's done. But if you got extra dollars to burn and you want to help spread the word by buying some YLI stuff, we've got stuff out there that you can buy. We got nice jackets. Look at a nice shirt. Maternal health is on our website. We have the new locator and then the new website. That's all happened. And literally a simple idea. I humbly say it was just an idea, and then a lot of other people helped make it work. I mean, certainly someone had to ride the horse and steer and direct and all that type of stuff, but we would not be where we are today if it weren't for people like Jill and these young ladies back here and others that have come in and have heard these conversations over the last 8 years, because you've gone back to the community and said, here's a place to start, here's a place to help, here's a place that we can do some things. So you have the opportunity to provide feedback. We're always looking for suggestions. Go out to the website, kick the tires. I've said that a couple of times. We want to know, is it working? Is it not working? What could we do better? You can subscribe to our listserv if you want. And really, you can ask a couple of questions to yourself is, how can, you came here for a reason, so how can we help you? And if you want to brainstorm more about that, you can reach out to me. I'm retiring next Thursday, I think I told you, but you can reach out to Your Life Iowa. You can use the contact form, and we'll get back to you and figure out how to happen. That's how I'm here. Jill reached out and said, I want you to come to Spencer before you retire because you have a message to share and I want others to hear about it. But then it's also, how can you help Your Life Iowa? What's the lens? What are the things that you have that you're experiencing right now that potentially could help others, and we need to add it to the site, or we need to create a resource, or we need to create a TV spot, or whatever it is that we need to do to help reduce a barrier and ensure that every Iowan in that valuable moment is able to get access to the care that they're seeking or the information that they're seeking. And with that, there may be questions, but I want you to hear from our folks at Seasons.
Thanks. I'm Janelle Thomas, and this is Jaden Horkin. We both supervise the crisis team over at Season Center. How many of you are familiar with Season Center? Yes, okay, good. That kind of makes our job a little easier. So we do have services outside of our crisis services, based out of all of our many different offices. But what we really want to hone in and focus on today is the crisis services and how that goes along with Your Life Iowa and 988. So you can kind of see on the bottom there, we have our 24/7 crisis hotline and talk line, like Eric was talking about. There's a lot of those lines. We keep ours open still. A lot of our clients and people internally will utilize that. But we've also seen an increase in people utilizing the 988 instead. We also then dispatch through that our mobile crisis services, and then can also send in referrals for our crisis stabilization programs, which are either community-based in the client's community, or at our new residential place, which is Alex's place here in Spencer. And in all of that, doing care coordination. So I'll talk a little bit about just kind of like our community-based stuff, and then Jaden will talk a little bit more about Alex's place, and if you have any questions, please intervene at any time. But our mobile crisis team, like we kind of talked about earlier, is dispatched through our line directly or through 988 or Your Life, where they will do the warm handoff to us in this area that we serve. And so they'll call and they'll have already done the assessment, maybe been on the phone with this person for an hour, and finally, getting to the point where they want somebody to come out to their house. And so they'll kind of let us know the information of what's going on. And then we will use our 2-person response model, where we can come out without law enforcement in our plain clothing, and just really do some of that safety planning, getting referrals made as needed. What is the client needing in order to continue to remain safe in that community environment. Some of those things, it's getting them connected with their therapist that they hadn't seen in a year or so, or it's making referrals to a crisis stabilization center like Alex's place, where we work really closely with the other two, one in Sioux City and Sac City. So it's a really easy process. I love that video that you showed earlier. We've been working on our TikTok lately, and I was like, hey, we should do what happens when you call the crisis line TikTok. So, but we just, a lot of that is just going out and communicating with schools and churches. A lot of times if somebody doesn't qualify for inpatient level of care, but they're needing that just additional assistance in order to continue to be successful, an ED will call us in if, flow state's like, hey, they don't need to go inpatient, but maybe they can go home with something in place. We'll come do some safety planning, and then follow up with them, work with them through those upcoming days and weeks. But if they come into Alex's place, it's a little bit more intensive. They get to have that break from what is their stressor and focus entirely on their crisis. So Jaden works really closely with that. So I'll let those in here talk about it.
Yeah, so our crisis stabilization is similar to our community-based, except it is in Alex's place that is named after Alex Jacobson. And so we're very grateful and thankful for his family for letting us or allowing us to name that after him. So that is that residential where a client can stay with us. Here in Spencer, it's in our Seasons office here at the Spencer Main, kind of behind the hospital. We have our own little area. It's 4 beds that we have currently. And you just would put in that referral or contact our crisis line and kind of just talk to them about what services you need, or if you're not feeling safe at home or kind of need that service, and they'll kind of guide you in that direction. So if you're needing more of that intensive, but not needing that inpatient level of care, maybe you need some more wraparound of therapy and skill building during the day in that safe environment, but not needing that higher level of care. So kind of in that middle piece, kind of where you're not hit that maybe rock bottom, but right in the middle. So just trying to help you get back into the community. We have the access to also refer to our community base to help be successful out in the community as well, to kind of guide into that situation, get them connected with other services. So that's really been helpful. Yeah, it is. All of our services are all voluntarily, so they have to be willing and wanting to have that service and want to really come in and kind of get the help that they need. So again, kind of what they need. You can help assist referring someone or lead them in that direction, but again, it is ultimately up to them and that person if they want to do that. So.
I think one of our ultimate goals outside of the client care and doing what the client wants and needs in order to stabilize is we want to keep people out of our emergency rooms, out of our jails, and some of that early intervention has really been vital and important for that, just so that people aren't getting into some of relapsing and then getting going further into their mental illness, and we want to help keep that out. So it's just been really cool to be able to be a part of that and work ourselves out of the job every day. So yeah. Any questions? I feel like I was not as well spoken as this morning, but I think it's great.
Yeah. At Alex's place, is that supervised bed? You said there's 4 beds. How's that?
Yes, so we have staff there. We have 2 staff there at all times. So they're there. It's our crisis care coordinators. So they're there. We do have more just that are in the building in the Seasons office, but not necessarily managing Alex's place. But we always have 2 staff there, 24/7, 7 days a week, and then we have our mental health therapists that kind of do that daily mental health check-in with that client during the day. So it's just kind of managed by that. It is where it's kind of in that middle piece where they don't need that higher level of care, meaning we don't do that 15-minute checks. We don't check in that capacity because it's where that middle part is. So okay. We're there, we're available, we're awake 24/7. Our staff are, so they're available to help and assist. But we're not checking in every 15 minutes for those safety checks kind of thing. But we're checking throughout the day while they're awake and kind of working with them during that crisis. So yeah.
So is this kind of a transition? It would be, if it's an extreme case, they would go to the ED and then they would transition to this maybe before they go home? Is that the idea?
Sometimes, yeah. We have had some referrals come in from the Spencer BHU. It's just kind of that next step down because the client is no longer meeting that inpatient level of care requirement, but they're still feeling like they want to continue working on things. They don't think, you know, they're confident or comfortable with that yet. So yeah, that is can be that next step down. We have also had some go from Spencer BHU to Alex's place to our community-based stabilization, just to kind of help ease that transition, so that they can continue to stay successful versus getting put back in their environment and then going, you know, and re-engaging in high-risk behavior.
And is it just for adults or youth as well?
Yes, it is only 18 and older.
Alex's place, but our community-based, we can meet with youth. We, I think a lot in the past year has seen an increase in that with our minors. We can go into the schools to provide our skills building with them, and we can also assist in getting that telehealth appointment set up so that they're seeing that telehealth therapist while they're engaging in the service and seeing our skills provider, one of our mobile crisis staff during that school days, because sometimes one of the biggest challenges is things fall off when they go home for, you know, whatever reason, you know. How busy are parents that work full-time and have kids, right? So there's just a lot of barriers in that alone.
Is Autumn Center getting close to opening back up?
Autumn Center, we are still waiting on some things from FEMA in order to get that going, but it is our goal.
And if you ever have questions or just want to know more about it, just please call our crisis line, and one of our crisis care coordinators can, you know, provide you with that information, or if you need more or want us to come out and talk or explain some more, they can get you connected with us.
Awesome.
Thank you, ladies, for doing what you do and for Season Center. That's so wonderful. So to kind of close up, we're at the end of time. I do want to give away some bling pieces, but we'll do this health promotion swag. Going forward, if you want to reach out because, hey, it'd be great to have a Your Life Iowa presentation in my community or business setting or community setting, faith-based organization, whatever it may be, you can just reach out to yli@hhs.iowa.gov. That's monitored by the department and they'll respond. You can also do a contact form off of the website. And Karen Hyatt, some of you may be familiar with, is the lead for the disaster behavioral health response team across the state and also Project Recovery Iowa. She's going to be the interim director until they post and fill my position. So we'll be in good hands. Karen's got long history of working with helplines across the state. In fact, she worked on the original 1-800-BETS-OFF helpline way back in the day. Is actually one of the people that answered the calls. So it was a little bit of history I did not know about her. So thank you for coming out.